Mindset going over.
Yeah.
You obviously picked out University of Florida because Ryan Lochte was there. He was number one in your spot, and you were going directly for him. Can't do anything but respect that as an attitude.
Naivety.
But what was your end game at that point in your head? Was it just to improve? Was it Commonwealth Games? Was it I am not going to be satisfied until I compete in the Olympics? How did you map out what was to come next, or were you just going one step at a time?
Essentially, I was just going one step at a time, but you kind of know what those steps look like when you're at that point. Like, if you were to ask me what my mindset was when I was like 15, it was just let's see how good I can be. And then, from a teenager, from 17, 18, when I made that decision to go over to the States, I kind of knew that there was a potential for as good as I can be to be one of the best, like to be Commonwealth, World Champion, Olympic level. Now, there's tiers to those levels themselves, but I was like, right, once I've made that switch to like, I think I know how good I can be, let's really pursue it. I knew that it was going to be like make the Olympics, like that was going to be the goal. And I think that was I would have been happy with just making the Olympics. But I come from a sporting country, Great Britain, that is very successful. So if you're going to make the Olympics, you're potentially going to make the final, because it's very tough to make the Olympics for Team GB because we're such a great swimming nation, especially in the last kind of 12 years. So I knew that if I was making the Olympics, I wasn't just going to make it and get a heat swim and then that be done. I was going to make the final. If you're in the final, you're in for a chance. So I knew that if I could make the Olympics, I could be potentially stood on the podium, because that's just the way that the grassroots sport has been in swimming in the UK. So, you kind of figure out as you go along one step at a time what those next steps are going to look like. And I think I had a really nice journey, a really nice progression, because my first major international meet was the Commonwealth Games. And then from there, it was the World Championships. And then from there, it was the Olympics. So just because of the timeline of those years, 2014, 2015, 2016, I had a lovely natural progression from Commonwealth Games being, a big meet, but there's a couple of superstars missing from those competitions. World Championships, everyone's there. The pressure is pretty similar. You get a taste of what it's like to be on the top of the international stage. And then from there, it's the Olympics, which just has that special extra spark. It's only every 4 years. There's obviously a lot more pressure that goes into it. So I think I got quite lucky with just the timing of how I progressed through the sport.
Building from one success into the next, looking to your first Olympics, the excitement that went with that, the process that went with that, what changed in that 4-year period? Was it just more of the same work? Were there any things you did differently because the level had gone up a notch? Or was it just more of the same, which is being the best athlete you can be, in the best team setting you can be, and doing your best to deal with the pressure on the day?
I think it is a bit of that, and just those steady improvements. But 2014 to 2015, when I started to see solid, good results on the world stage, I started to really understand exactly what type of athlete I could be. There's some people that are super specialized in one thing, and their whole goal is how good can I be at this one individual race? Maybe it's a sprint, maybe it's a fairly simple race as far as the skills required. Maybe there's some that are a bit more in depth. So for me, I swam 400 medley, which gave me a big diverse training background. I had to do all the strokes. I had to be pretty quick off the start, but also a bit of endurance and just a bit of grit and determination that goes into a race like that across all 4 strokes. So what that allowed me to do is have a few different events potentially that I could be quite good at. And then suddenly that opened the field of, okay, maybe you're not just going to be a 400 medley swimmer and specialize in that and trying to make the Olympic final or win a medal there, but you're also going to be able to go down, so you can do the 200 medley. You could also be pretty good at freestyle, 200 freestyle. Maybe you could be part of the 4x200 freestyle relay. So over those years, I started to understand where my specialty could be. And what was exciting about that was I thought I could be pretty good across quite a few different events. So suddenly it was really exciting. It's don't just make the Olympics, but try and qualify and swim several times in several different events. So it became really exciting. It meant that my training and the domestic competitions I was doing could be, we could play around with it quite a lot. And I'm always someone that I need to be stimulated with things that are new to me. So I thought it was always going to be too boring if I was just going to go for the one event. Say it was 100-meter front crawl there and back for freestyle. yeah, I've got a lot of respect for people that can be so good at that. But for me, I want to be good at a few different things. So it was just kind of experimenting different ways to improve, different ways to test myself. So something like off events, maybe something that I'm not going to do at the Olympics, but it's going to help me from a training and a racing point of view. So just trying to be as versatile as I could be, as experienced as I could be in different disciplines, different environments, different speeds, finding out what my weaknesses were, because I had them, and finding out what my strengths were and using them and amplifying them. That was really it. So just understanding what type of racer I was, what type of trainer I was, where my best events were, where my off events were, and just trying to, shape that into, hopefully a great 2016 and great Olympic Games.
How many hours a week were you in the pool?
In the pool, like probably 20, just over 20. And then you throw in gym sessions, conditioning sessions. It's like 30 hour week of like in-person training. And then there's like this, when I think about like what my training load actually was, you got to take into account like, good half an hour before and after the session, you're either priming yourself, you get in the zone, you're recovering. So that's an extra hour on top. There's then also like, if I'm training, when I was a full-time athlete, as you run a business now as well. So it's probably even harder, but like if you got a double, you're training in the morning, 5 till 7, you're training again at the evening. Those hours in between, it's very hard to switch off. So it's actually the full day. You're either physically recovering, you're mentally recovering to try and refocus again to get back in the pool or back in the gym that afternoon. So it's like, it's the whole day. It's a full time. It's 24/7, especially if you want to be really, really good. Like when I was in my like sweet spot, I remember like when I was so hungry for that success, it was genuinely the first thing I thought about when I woke up and the last thing I thought about when I went to bed. And it maybe wasn't always like that. I was able to just, control my emotions and my determination at different times of the day and different times of the year. But, as someone that was so hungry, it was like a full-time 24/7 is really all I was maybe subconsciously thinking about, not always consciously thinking about, but it is, you've got your training load and you've got all those other hours that it's still on your mind. It's still so passionate for you.
How did your tolerance for the pressure in 2014 versus, Commonwealth Games, World Championships, Olympics, how did your tolerance for pressure develop throughout those? Were there certain things that you employed as tactics to deal with things better, or did you just have total confidence in your ability and the work done to get it done?
Yeah. I again, like following that natural progression from the level of competitions I was being exposed to, my ability to handle the pressure also just naturally got better. But it was definitely things that I learned, like almost like the way that I was feeling before the Olympic final against like Michael Phelps and Ryan Lochte. The pressure that I was feeling, the nerves that I was feeling wasn't nearly as much as the first time I was ever exposed to any sort of level like that, which was probably the Commonwealth Games. So Commonwealth Games was really the turning point, because I knew I was having a good competition. I was like day 2 and I'd qualified first for the 400 medley, which if you'd asked me years ago, I would be like, that's crazy. So I was like, that was the first chance I had the opportunity to like really deliver when real pressure is on. So that took a lot of just like grit and self-belief. I was like, okay, this is the chance to like make it or not make it. And I think that there was genuinely, like, I felt a switch go in the back of my mind. I was lying first, and up until that, I'd had moments where I'd maybe been going into a race quite highly seeded, but never came out on top. And I just, for the first time in my life, thought, well, why not make it you today? Like, this is your opportunity, home crowd. You like, on paper, everything is saying that you should do well in this race. So it's just like, right, let's just back that. Let's just go with that. None of this, like, I'll settle for second or let's hope I do a good race. It's like, go out there and try and win it. So that just like grit and determination in that moment, I believe, set me up for the rest of it just being a lot easier to handle. So that as the pressure built, I was being more comfortable with it. I was being more experienced with pressure. And it turns out that I really liked the pressure, and I did very well with the pressure, and the pressure liked me. So I embraced it. Like little things, like I used to, get super in the zone and try and completely blank everything out with my headphones on, to the point where I was like, never had my headphones on, embraced the energy, felt the energy in the room. If I could, try and embrace the crowd as well. Because those little things, because when I realized, oh, actually, you do quite well with the pressure, I was like, let the pressure in, let it all in, let the environment kind of take over you in a way and see what you can do, because there's some people that can rise to the occasion and there's some people that can really crack under the pressure. So I was one of the ones that rose to the occasion. So once I figured that out, I was like, right, bring it on. I want it louder, I want it bigger, I want the lights brighter.
And Glasgow as entry point, home turf, home crowd is pretty remarkable. Some may say fate in terms of timing, you being born at the time that you were, the way that everything unfolded. It's pretty wild that you were given that opportunity, but for you to rise to it and come away with an incredible result from the off must have just given you confidence to see it through to...
Yeah, it's funny because when I was like, whenever Glasgow got announced as the games, it always happens maybe like 4 or 8 years ahead. So I was just like a teenager, a little kid at the time, and I was like, damn, like Glasgow, like really, like if I make the Commonwealth Games, like I'm going to Glasgow. Like I go to Glasgow all the time. You know, I want to go to somewhere like Australia or somewhere exotic. And at the same time, I think London was announced for the Olympic Games, which I didn't even end up making. But at the time, I was like, damn, like all these, I didn't think about it at the time. Like that's actually amazing. That's great. So like as a kid, I was like, I was bummed out about it. But then realizing that like that is a really special moment for me and the entire Team Scotland. So as an athlete to go there, first games, let's call it a home games, even though I'm from Edinburgh, like having the crowd, like I went into that race and 85 to 90% of the crowd wanted me to win. Like that's very special. That doesn't quite often happen. Very rare. So when I realized that, I was like, this is a really, really cool moment. And I went to my second Commie Games in Australia, and it was just as special, but it wasn't Glasgow. It wasn't Glasgow. So yeah, I really felt that was a, I guess luck, the time I was born and the time I did well, and I'm quite thankful for that.
Went to the Commonwealth Games in 2014, and this is funny because all my mates we were all graduating, and they were like, "What are you gonna do?" I was like, "I'm gonna get a pro contract. They were like, "Well, what if you don't?" I was like, "I will." Yeah, and they were like, fucking hell. Okay. Yeah. So I was 20, 21, and I was like, I'm gonna make it happen, basically. And I did it. I got to obviously qualified a year in advance for the Commonwealth Games, because I hit the criteria beforehand. It was obviously in Glasgow, so Scotland were selecting the team. You could qualify a year before if you hit all the criteria. So thankfully I did that, and I was sort of in a solid position for the whole year training for these games. Went in and I was racing David Rudisha, who was the world record holder, Olympic champion. Nigel Amos was the 4th fastest man in the world, Olympic silver medalist. We had a guy called Ferguson Rotich from Kenya, who was the fastest man in the world that year. A whole host of others. I think I was ranked maybe 21st on the rankings. And everyone was like, "Oh, let's hope Guy gets out his heat." And I was like, "Nah, stop that." Like, I'm making the final. So, and I said to the papers, I want Rudisha in the first round, and they were like, "Who the hell is this kid?" And the seeding came out for the heats, and I get Rudisha. And I was like, "Oh, maybe I should have
careful what you wish for." Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. But qualified out my heat. Semi-final, and it's probably the most sort of like strongest memory I have with everything that I've done, purely because like the stakes were so high. There was 50,000 people in Hampden screaming for anyone in a home nation's vest, but let alone a Scottish vest. I'm racing against the world record holder at 8-9 o'clock on a I don't even Wednesday night, I think it was. Tons of my friends, family, coaches, mum, dad, everyone's in the crowd, and it was an evening race. And just before we get the shuttle to the track, you have to get your bag checked from management, just to make sure you've not forgotten your spikes or anything. They go through everything. Yeah. Believe it or not, these things happen. So we went through all of that, and but before that, I got a shower, and I was sick in the shower with nerves. And I was like, come on, get your shit together, Guy. You can do this. And I was warming up, and then the way we came out, you go to a call room, basically. So once you're doing your warm-up, you get called into a call room about 25 or 30 minutes before you actually race. And it's almost like it's like a chicken pen. And all these, I don't know if you've seen it, but like all the athletes from each heat are in it's almost just, you're just looking at each other and you're sizing each other up, and some people are joking around, talking, other people are in the zone, just doing it in their own way. And it's a very, very nerve-wracking experience. I've always loved it because I see a lot of people that would crack up just with sheer nerves, see people shaking, trying to put the pins on and with the bibs, name bibs and stuff. So I was in this sort of zone and I was like, I'm going to do this. And the way it was at Hampden, they brought you out about 5-10 minutes before you got brought onto the track, and it kind of just opened up. You're kind of in this sort of tunnel, and you walked up and up this ramp, and you could hear the noise, and it was just insane. And it was obviously in the evening. For some reason, every morning session, evening session was a sellout, but when the lights go down, there's just something different. And I could hear this noise, and it was crazy. And my heart was just going mental. And it's the one time I've actually felt like a gladiator. Like when you're walking out and you can't really see anything, but you just hear this noise. And I came out and I was just like, I'm ready to go. Like, and I was just pumping my chest, like arms up in the air. And I had the race of my life. Rhodesia was first. Ferguson Rotates, the fastest man in the world, was second. And I was third. And I hung on for the automatic spot, like, for dear life. And I qualified outright for the final. And to me, that was like one of the best performances and best moments I've ever had. And then, the final, I was 6, ran a PB in the final. And it was just like deafening. And that was like the breakthrough moment for me. I signed with New Balance at the time, straight off the back of that. And that kind of got me into this athletics world that kind of set me up for like the next few years. And that was really the start of my journey. But, and I've done 2 Commonwealth Games since, and world champs, European champs, everything. And it's like nothing will ever top that moment for me, ever.
Peaked too soon.
I peaked at 21, mate. I'm now 32. So
we had Dan Wallace on as well, who was
I know Dan,
obviously part of that. And he was saying something similar. I guess it's a bit different because you don't have the into the stadium effect. You're out of the pen into the pool area, and it's probably easier to see faces in the pool, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
I think for him, he was saying just how much value and power he got from just seeing right there. You can make the face out. Those are the people, home turf, off I go, full send. This is the best experience I'm ever going to have.
100%. And even for my final, like it was eerily quiet when I walked out for some reason. There was a bit of a lull, and someone shouted my name in the crowd, like, just like, come on, Guy. And it set a chain because I ran up the back straight, up the home straight, sorry, as opposed to around the bend. And someone shouted my name, and then all of a sudden everyone did. And I was like,
what happened physiologically at that point? Did you feel another gear kick in? Did you feel adrenaline spike? Or did you just have a little bit more in you to grit your teeth? Because I guess the thing with these things is, like, you're a trained, conditioned athlete. In theory, external inputs shouldn't have any impact because you're already pushing your top end of what you can do.
Yeah.
But that moment there, what changed? Did you get more from it?
Yeah, I get a huge buzz from it. I've said in the past, I feel like these big crowds like make or break athletes. You either shell up or the opposite happens. And for me, I've always sort of relished that. I've always loved it. The older I've got, I'm actually now struggling with lower key races. I don't feel anything in them. And I'm really struggling with that now. And I don't know if it's because I've just been involved in these sort of big meets for such a long period of time now. And I'm working my way through that. I don't really know what's going to happen. But the bigger meets, I get such a buzz of it. And even if I go in only feeling 80 or 90%, I know I'm going to raise my game. It's going to give me something, whether it's adrenaline or something ignites in me to perform. And I've very rarely had a sort of bad performance unless I've been injured. I've very rarely had a bad performance with these big crowds.
The fun-driven aspect of what you do is fascinating, and you can tell from all your content, everything you do, that is exactly the way that you approach things. But when it came to the pressure of performing, the actual competition itself. You enjoyed the process. You enjoyed the first Olympics, etc. Talk me through that first Olympics start line. What
Yeah,
was was it a feeling of fun, or
no.
was the pressure mounting upon you?
Oh, it was pressure. Oh, it was, I can't deal with this. This is too much pressure. I'm not having fun. And I panicked a little bit in the race and made a move too early, and it cost me, a spot into the finals. But I just remember thinking, I was only 24 at the time, and I thought, God, I've learned so much through this process. If I can somehow find my way back to an Olympic team in 2012, I know I can perform better. And I did. I came back 4 years later with 4 years more experience, 4 years stronger, 4 years more prepared. And I did end up making the Olympic final in 12 and running my best time there. So it's, I was, and I did have fun in 12. Every moment of the competition, I was still nervous as hell, don't get me wrong, but I was having a lot of fun in 12. But part of that's just knowing what to expect.
Do you think it was a mistake that needed to be made on that stage for you to come back stronger, or do you think it's something you could have made in training beforehand?
I think I would have made it in competition because the World Championships in track and field is very similar to the games in the way that it's run, in the prestige. The money's actually better in a World Championship than it is in Olympic Games. So I would have learned how to make a final eventually. I think my first final was actually the next year in 2009. I made my first final in Berlin. So like I did finally kind of figure it out, but no, the games is different because that there's like 2 billion people watching, and you have to wrap your mind around that. But I got better and better at putting all of that away, of putting my head down and saying, this is a 400-meter track, just like any other 400-meter track, and that's what I do. I go around it twice. That is my specialty. And it doesn't matter how many billions of people are watching. 400-meter track's a 400-meter track. It's just another day at the office, right? I would tell myself that as I was walking out. I'm just going back to the office. Another day at the office. Happens to be an office with a camera and a few billion people watching, but I tried to really break it down and not make it more complicated than it was.
It's a very simple sort of psychological technique that all athletes need to use in whatever their specialty is, isn't it? And in terms of the crowd, the pressure of those 2 billion, not to put an intimidating number on it, but the 2 billion people that were watching, if you compare it to 2008 to 2012, I assume in 2008 you were much more aware of the crowd, of that pressure than you were in 2012. Is that fair to say?
Let me think about that for a second. I think I was more. I was equally aware, but I was letting the nervousness and anxiety kind of spiral me downward in '08, whereas I was harnessing that nervous energy and letting it fuel me in 12. So when I talk to young athletes a lot, their number one complaint about running is I get so nervous before races. And they hate it. Like it's enough that they want to quit the sport. And I say, no, 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 no. That's the best feeling in the world. You want to feel nervous. You want to feel that anxious feeling because that's adrenaline pumping through your veins. Now, you can let that adrenaline wear you out the week before a race. You're constantly thinking about it. You're constantly nervous and fidgeting, and that's going to make you tired. Or you can train your mind to not focus on it and instead harness that adrenaline, that feeling of nervousness the day of. Right. And so in 2008, I was so nervous for a month leading up to the games that it probably cost me energy. But in 2012, I had learned how to deal with that energy. And so instead, on the day of the finals, I'm just sitting here like ready to explode with energy. I'm so excited. I'm nervous, but it's good energy. It's energy that I appreciate, that I want, that I'm going to use to do something better than I've ever done it before.
The almost post-event depression come down that comes from all that energy, all that time, all that focus for that run up to the event itself, for the event to be over, and then it's gone. That's it. You've drawn a line under it and you move on. How have you dealt with that throughout your career, given that it's a 4-year gap between the games? Obviously, you've got the championships in between, but those first couple of weeks after the games, what was your state of mind, your mental health like in terms of dealing with that?
'08 was a little more manageable because I was so young. I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to sign another 4-year deal with a shoe company, so I'm going to get my another chance. It was kind of like, yeah, I'm pissed off that it didn't go as well as I wanted, but I need to pick myself up and get ready for the next one. After 12, it was a little bit harder. It was like 6 weeks of, okay, I'm in my prime right now. If I try to train for another 4 years, I will be the grandfather of Team USA. Like the chances of making a team at 32 in the 800 are very slim. I was just thinking, that's it. I'm never going to be a gold medalist. So it was more like wrapping my mind around that fact that I wasn't going to win a medal as an Olympian, and just trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. Like, do I still want to do this professionally? Do I want to continue to try to have success at the world championship level and the US level, and is the money worth the sacrifice still? For me, having coming off that high in in 2012, I had a feeling that I would be able to sign a pretty lucrative deal. So I will say point blank, I would have run for free until 2012 Olympic Games. I got paid, which was awesome, but I was doing it because I wanted to see how good I could get. After 2012, 2013, a lot of the reason I was running was because it was a job. It was a great job. I got paid really well at that point, but it wasn't the same carefree, I would do this for free attitude.
There's a difficult balance as an Olympic athlete, isn't there, to work around the fact that you don't get paid by the IOC, but equally you miss out on potential income by peaking and managing your training around the games itself rather than the championships.
I missed out on revenue. I took a salary, not a salary cut, but I took out a cut on my income every Olympic season because the IOC doesn't pay anything. Like, one of the best paydays is at the World Championships, because the World Athletics, IAAF at the time, actually has prize money, and the IOC doesn't. So like all the sacrifice and peaking and tapering that you're doing for the games, you're not getting paid for any of that. You're doing it on the off chance that you're that one person that wins a big Olympic gold medal and you get paid that way. It's a real gamble.
And sponsorship endorsements from athletes aren't even allowed to be spoken about publicly at the games,
Don't
aren't
get
they?
started on that. Rule 40 and all that BS.
Sounds like a rabbit hole that we'll
That's right there.
we'll save for another time. But